Welcome to the D&D Fitness Radio podcast, brought to you by your hosts, Don Saladino from New York City and Derek Hansen from Vancouver, Canada. In episode 55, we speak with the muscle doc, Jordan Shallow.
So it's cool. So what episode are we on now? What is this? 55?
Something like that. Yeah, by the time this one gets out, yeah, it'll be like 55.
I'm very proud of it too. We have some pretty good guests on. I mean, all in all, I think 90% of it, 90% of the interviews we were pretty happy with. Correct?
Yep.
Maybe more or less.
Are you jinxing us for this one?
No, he's gonna go. I think the question really is, and we don't really do any formal intro here, is, there's always so much to talk about, but how do we kind of hone that in today? And how do we, I think the one thing that I do want to do is I want to start with, your background and how you started, and go into some detail on that. And now it's pretty interesting because you really don't have a home base. No. You travel for how many weeks a year you travel right now? 50?
I haven't had a mailing address since August of last year.
Yeah, but we just say, where do you go home to?
I don't. I just go to the next city.
Really?
Yeah, so I just flew in from Toronto 2 days ago, competed on the weekend. I'll be here until tomorrow, fly back to Toronto, teach a course, fly to the UK on Monday, teach another course.
But you're in Toronto a lot.
If I had to pick Toronto, New York, Miami, LA, San Francisco are like my big cities that I fly into, but then I just sort of splinter off.
So Raptors or Golden State? Who's going to win?
Raptors all day, every day. I lived in the Silicon Valley for 7 years. I'm like an anti-Golden State fan. Whoever down. It's just, I don't like the sport culture in the South Bay, like San Francisco area sucks. They're not sports fans, they're opportunists. Half the people there can't even skate, but everyone's a Sharks fan.
Yeah. I get it. I was laughing. What was it? What was the game? No, it was actually a Raptors game the other day. Yeah. It must have been when they lose.
No, they lost game 2.
Yeah. I think one of the announcers got on, or one of the ESPN commentators, which I'm down on ESPN right now, but they were basically talking about how the fans were dead and how there was no energy in the stadium, and they were like, "What the hell's going on here?" And I was like, "What is this?" Yeah, whatever. I don't know. Everyone's an expert. ESPN has gone to shit, Derek. No, seriously, it's gone to shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have these commentators now. They're bringing a lot of obviously attractive women on, but they're reading off the cue cards. It's not annoying. I know it sounds sexist, but really,
it's a circle jerk of guys with bad information and bad suits. That's the whole thing. It's awful. I can't stand it.
What's Stephen A. Smith's deal? This is what we're going to talk about also. But has he played anything in his life?
Oh, no.
Junior year baseball in high school. I want to hear, is he an actual athlete? Is Skip Bayless an actual athlete?
Probably not.
I bet we could get them on our podcast. All right, so Jordan. So we know Jordan has no permanent home address.
No.
But I can tell everyone this, that it's fun for me to meet different minds in the industry, especially young guys. Which I could say I'm the older. Well, Derek's the old guard here, but compared to Jordan, I'm 28. I'm 42, so I definitely got some years on you now. But it's good for me to see young guys coming into the industry that actually, are super smart. I think their business sense is going off in a really good path, and they're surrounding themselves with good people, and they're getting good reputation. So that's why Jordan's on today. Plus, an incredible programmer. You just competed in powerlifting over on Sunday. Where was that?
I was in
Toronto, and I was laughing because he actually had Ed Cohen go on his Instagram and pay him a little love, and was discussing how good your squat looks. So the guy's got it up here, but he can also move some weight pretty damn well. So I think today, Derek, I really want to kind of jump off on Jordan's background, how he started, training methodology, and we'll just kind of let everything snowball a little bit. He's also a chiropractor. I haven't brought that up. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm interested in that as well.
So let's go. So back it up, man.
Yeah. I was a personal trainer at 15, 16 years old, and oddly enough, I wanted to be a history professor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just had a really good high school history teacher, and that was dead set PhD route. I started my undergrad in history and political science. I had most kids in Canada a pretty good, had an affinity for hockey, and played hockey from a young age and was able to kind of rise the ranks in local junior, like AAA, junior A, or junior C, junior B, junior A. But then you age out really quick. Like you're not in the NHL by like 17, like time to hang out. Yeah, so was always into weight training, like in preparation for sport performance. And I guess sort of started to click with me, like, okay, when I became a personal trainer and started to learn more about my own training. It was an off season. The training was just always an adjunct, right? Like it was always just sport specific. How can I get better in the off season? How can I use the barbell to, and create better performance on the ice? And then I sort of fell in love with the process, and hockey sort of dwindled off. And then when I moved up to California for grad school after switching majors to kinesiology, I just stayed on the bar, and training became the sport to train for, and then got into powerlifting. She's 25, been doing this competitively for like 3 years now. Was able to get hooked up with arguably one of the better powerlifters in the modern era, a guy named Dan Green. He was the first patient I had when I graduated chiropractic college, and he kind of took me under his wing and kind of showed me the ins and outs of competitive powerlifting, and I just looked at it through a clinical lens, finishing a 4-year chiropractic degree in Santa Clara, California. And just, I was always just maintained, even in a clinical setting, like I'm an athlete first. And I think that gives you a decent amount of empathy and buy-in when you start dealing with patients who are higher end athletes, and just higher end performers in general, like real type A people. Like the thing I would run into is like, oh, my last chiro said it hurts to do that, just don't do it. It's like, well, that's not a fucking option, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's like the long and short of it. And then finished. Graduated 2015, started working at Apple's world headquarters, kind of in a multidisciplinary wellness setting as the chiropractor on site in Cupertino, California. And then I transitioned from there into private practice. So opened 2 offices, one in Mountain View, California, one in Dublin, California, while simultaneously taking the role as strength and conditioning coach for Stanford rugby team. Did that for 3 years, and then just started getting booked for lectures and seminars and just education. Developed a few curriculum through my online company, and now I travel exclusively just to teach. So.
It just got brought on to you mentioned you just got brought on to Elite.
Oh yeah, so I don't know when this will be out, but it should be announced sometime this week. I signed or sponsored by Elite FTS just as like a coach, one of their sponsored coaches now, which is cool. Like especially growing up, like that's where I got a lot of my information from.
Yeah.
So.
It's a fun site.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you move real well for a powerlifter. I'm not saying powerlifters don't move well. I mean, they obviously move well on their plane and on during their craft, but you move very well besides being underneath the bar. And I think that's something that I really enjoyed watching out of you, because it's pretty motivating to see a guy who's a lot bigger than me, who's like, no, we can still get huge, we can still get strong. And you know this in the back of your head, but you also say to yourself, you want to start surrounding yourself with people who kind of follow that, methodology and that practice.
And a lot of that just comes from like seeing where things go wrong when they go wrong. Like being in clinical practice, people only come to see me when the wheels fall off the bus. So everyone just gets so pigeonholed in their view of like direct ways of building strength. They don't realize that a lot of times their biggest rate limiter long term is injuries causing a lack of consistency of training. So it's like, yeah, we might not be taking 5 steps forward because we're doing unilateral movements as an accessory, or like unilaterally loaded unilateral movements to really evoke a stimulus of instability. And it's like, I swap with both legs. It's like, yeah, but if you can't stand on one at a certain weight, that's going to be an issue.
Right.
So it's like playing the long game, and again, looking through that clinical lens and approaching, honestly, taking a strength and conditioning standpoint of sport specificity and applying it to a sport like powerlifting is just not a viewpoint that a lot of people take. They're just like, oh, if this sport is squat, bench, and deadlift, we're just going to squat, bench, and deadlift. It's like, I understand the accruing strength through specificity of the movement, but at the same time, it's like, if you're a wide receiver and you just run slants, it's like, you're not going to spend the whole time just running slants. Like you're going to go to the weight room and you're going to contingency plan for when the wheels come off the bus, right? So I think having that exposure in high frequency, like I was lucky, all my patients were, professional athletes almost out of the gate. It was like super overwhelming. Like, fuck, what if I break this dude? He's worth like $10 million.
Yeah.
But it's just like, out of the frying pan into the fire kind of thing. And you just got to learn. Luckily, having enough reps and having enough injuries and going through it is like, okay, I think I can navigate this at least better than most who haven't experienced that. But yeah, it just offers like a little bit of a different lens to look through training and programming and rehabilitation and prehab and all this crap.
Derek, you got anything?
Yeah, it was interesting. Like I did a presentation to some physical therapists last week, a couple weeks ago, and then we kind of went through like what were our most serious fuck ups and how it kind of changed us. And it was just interesting hearing from the physical therapists like how they made some mistakes. And a lot of time it wasn't their mistake. They just happened to be there when it happened. But I think that's a big part of the learning process, right? So making those mistakes or just seeing bad things happen once in a while. I mean, you don't want to see that, but it does kind of change our view of things. You guys,
What was your biggest fuck up? I never really asked you this. I got to think about mine a little bit.
I got a great story, but it's so long. But I think a lot of the time it's just you're going in presupposing what should happen, like, oh, they should be ready for this, right? Based on, and I've had people do everything from like rupture Achilles tendons in certain workouts where I thought after the fact, I'm thinking, okay, contextually, that guy's a little bigger. He's working the door at a club late at night. He's standing a lot. And we're having him do the same thing as some of the other guys who don't have that demand on him. So individualizing things, I think that was the biggest thing for me. So, but other than that, yeah, just little soft tissue things. And even something like as small as a very grade 1 strain, I take pretty hard because I'm thinking, okay, I should have figured that out ahead of time. I should have known that possibly could have happened. So anyways, but.
What about you?
I had one of my more prominent athletes tear a bicep. And it's hard, like when you deal with like higher end, it's like, you're toeing the line. So like out of the gate, one of the best lessons I learned was setting realistic expectations. It was like, look, this is how you feed your family. Like you're going to have to go in and there's no half measure. This is on the table if we don't fix this. It's like, let's try and fix it and fly close to the sun. And sometimes like you're gonna get burned, right? But it's being able to it's almost like splitting the atom. It's always how I explain it. It's like, we get this right, we'll light it up. We get it wrong, we're gonna blow this up.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I look at it, especially with people that just genetic freaks and their ability to produce force is so high. It's not your average like rest, ice, stim, heat, all that. It's like you're really playing in uncharted water. So that's where your own personal experience comes in. And yeah, that one I missed and jumped off the bone with an 836 deadlift and retract. Yeah. Wow. It's a big mover, man. So it's tough, but you live and learn, right? But kind of knowing going in like, hey man, this could happen if we don't switch it. I can tell you not to do it. You're still going to do it. So let's try and navigate this as best we can and hope for the best. And it didn't work.
I remember about a decade ago, I got manipulated into doing something with a client that I knew there was a cost of doing business with. So I'm, early on in my career, probably when I started in '99, in the beginning, I don't necessarily want to say, there was too much movement variability, but from week to week, there was so much variability in sets, reps, time under tension, rest time that, you never really see. People would get like generally stronger, but they wouldn't really get like strong. Like I believe now, like spend some time on a program, develop those qualities, improve. Like we were talking about the front squat the other day. Like that's going to take me a while to start improving. And I remember a client came up to me and was like, I want to try this side plank on a TRX. I'm like, I don't really use the TRX. Like I don't like feet elevated. Like I knew his shoulder was a little bit unstable, and he got on there and he tore his, he tore his scap. So, I remember turning around and he was like, I did this movement. You made me do this movement, and I tore it because of you. And I'm like, listen, I take responsibility for one reason only, because I knew you shouldn't have done that movement. So let's be very clear. And that shoulder was about to tear before we even did that fucking movement. But right then and there, I realized, I was like, listen, I will not. Like now when people come in, I'm like, listen, I'm also in a different situation where I can turn around and say, no, I'm not going to do this with you. And this is who I am. And my coaches aren't going to do this with you, and take it or leave it. But there was a time when you're like, business is coming in and you're trying to make people happy, and you can easily get manipulated. That's probably the reason for that story. The reason why I wanted people to hear that is allow General Pop to understand from our mistakes a little bit, and understand that God, 830 pounds. 836 deadlift. This isn't necessarily a weak guy. This is someone who's probably had some miles underneath their hood and understood how to move some weight, and even then shit happens. So I don't know, Derek. How about with your sprinters?
Again, I think the biggest thing for me was always like I didn't pay enough attention to what they were doing outside of their training, and they show up. And you just think, okay, we're ready. We did our warm up. They should be ready, but you didn't know what they did the night before, or, you know, or even they tend to try to do other exercises on their own that you don't find out about until after the fact. And you're like, what the hell? Like, we had a guy who, I think he was doing his PhD or master's in kinesiology, and then so they would try all this stuff in school, and so some guy had some special apparatus to strengthen an ankle, it was some elastic band bullshit thing, and so he was doing all this stuff, you know, strengthening his ankle. I'm like, look, you're a 100-meter sprinter, you run like 10.3, 10.2, and you're messing around with something like this, which is entirely different in terms of, you know, elastic response and all that. And so we went to a big meet, important meet, and he would have calf cramps all through the meet. And I didn't find out till later that he was doing this other stuff. So just keeping track of what people are doing outside of when they see you is very important. So
could you walk us through your process? So you're seeing a new client. I know you have your online business, and there's one process there, and I definitely want to plug in. I want to talk about that. But, you know, when you're seeing someone in person, what is your process? It's from point A to point B.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing special, really. Like, the initial out of the gate is history. I think that's where a lot of people fuck up, is they don't do enough diligence on the actual just sit down and gaining. Like, I've had that same thing happen, especially in strength and conditioning, right? Like, the old adage of, like, the strength coach just being the barbells, like, you know, in the high performance model now, it's like the strength coach or performance director needs to have all that information, whether it's biometrics, whether you're giving them an aura ring or anything like that. So if not provided with all that information, I need to go digging, right? Because, like, I'll ask people, like, hey, do you have any past injuries? Like, no. Oh, actually, I got in, like, a fucking car accident like last week. You're like, yeah, dude, like, that kind of matters.
Oh, I forgot to tell you.
Yeah,
I get that.
Weeks later. So it's like, history is huge. And I think a lot of people have an inability to extract the information they need. Like, they go through this checklist of onset, mechanism, progression, palliative, but they're looking for symptoms. They're not treating a patient. And like, look at the person when they're talking. Like, there's an intangible quality to being able to have a conversation and reading between the lines, especially with a pro athlete. Like, if you consult with a sports team, like, they don't know whose side you're on. Like, they could be hiding something from you, because if they think you're going to go to, like, the AT and be like, hey, you know, he's got, like, an ACL, right? And they're going to pull him and, like, red shirt him for, like, half a season, and he doesn't get paid. So it's like, that is, like, where it starts. And I think a lot of people go, oh, well, I'm going to do this range of motion test, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. I think the rubber really hits the road in that initial conversation. So detailed history, and I have, like, it's different. My intake forms where, you know, it matters whether or not you deadlift sumo or conventional or your rotational sport, what hand you are. It's not just like, how did it happen? When did it start? What makes it better? What makes it worse? Like, getting as much information as I can to, like, create a bigger picture. That's usually where it started. And then go into passive range of motion, like how you move when I move you, active range of motion, active resisted. And then I just go through, honestly, all my assessments end with, like, I don't like the word functional movement screen or whatever, because I think that's kind of a bastardized term, but like the stuff that we go through is like putting people in positions where they can't compensate. Like, single isolated joint stability tests in end range, whatever that end range is, and if they can get there, load it with an unstable load just to see. That's where most people's bottlenecks are. So let's see, like, if they have the ability to get into an end range, I'll load them to see what their stability is like. Because we can put them in an overhead squat, and that tells me if they're good at an overhead squat. Right. You could be a good athlete, they're just a compensatory monster, right? Like, they can pass and have MS. They can have no, like, thoracic extension, they can pass and have MS.
Sure.
Right? So it's like putting them in positions where, like, you're going to get, like, just a reduced essence of how they move at each joint segmentally, whether it's shoulder, whether it's hip, whether it's spine. And then from there, just kind of picking apart weak points, asymmetries front to back, left to right, top to bottom, and then programming from there. But understanding that, especially in my space, it's so inundated with, like, it's job security through obscurity, where it's like, oh, like, I saw this Instagram video of this guy, and it's like, my neck hurts, and it's like, oh, it's actually coming from your other side. It's like, sure, but let's not go fucking looking for zebras when we No, it's true though, man. Like, there's something to be said about, like, just having, like, a basic understanding, like Occam's razor approach. Like, the most likely answer is probably the answer, right? So most people try and dress it up and, like, oh, we're gonna, like, release this and do this, and we're gonna fascial. What the fuck are you talking about?
Right.
Like, it hurts when he squats. Why don't you watch him squat? Oh, yeah. There's your problem right
there. Yeah.
Like, I've refunded.
And then if that's not the issue, then you start deep diving.
Sure. But I think a lot of people, the violate yourselves, like in a lot of ways. Either A is ignorance, they just don't know how to assess a squat pattern, or like how to assess a hinging pattern, or how to assess gait cycle. They go like immediately to the most like crazy thing this person's never heard of, and it's just like it's so sort of like, oh, I never considered that. That must be it. It's like I've had people I just refunded their money on the spot. It's like my knees hurt when I squat. Oh yeah, just don't do it that way. That's a really shitty way to do it. Do it this way. Oh, my knee doesn't hurt. All right, see you later. Here you go.
Yeah. Derek, I got a quick question, and I'll let you go because I know I'm jumping in right now. But you know, so many people will come to me and they'll say, "Oh, I got a flexibility issue." And when you go look at it, you're shaking your head, or like you know, when you go look, you're like, "Wait a second, your flexibility's more than adequate. Like you're fine." And then you and I got in the conversation. This is something very basic to Derek and you, but stability, which is something you never hear. General Pop always refers to it as flexibility. We really dove in last time in our last conversation about stability. Can you talk about that? Can you educate people a little bit on how that's kind of what it seems like you lean more towards, because that's where the majority of the problems are?
Yeah, I mean, we look at the spectrum of like, I mean, maybe not a spectrum, but like an inverse correlation or an inverse relationship between likelihood of injury and increased mobility, right? Like I think Kelly, to a certain extent, with the rise of CrossFit and mobility, I think did a lot of, as far as scalable models go, I think that was good. And I think it brought to the general public this idea of like self-care, but it was not specific, right? It was a bash and mash, banded distraction. Like, let's just take you loose and limber.
Which is the whole clusterfuck of stuff that he threw in there.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think like I think candidly and specifically in practice, I think there's a lot more to him than that. Like, he strikes me as a really smart guy, but the mobility movement created the conversation of, hey, this hurts, what's the stretch? Or hey, this is tight, what's the stretch? And that creates a mechanism of injury that sets the stage of a mechanism of correction. If we think tightness and people are thinking this mechanical shortening, they're gonna it's a dose-dependent model until that perceived shortening goes away. It's like, it's not structural, it's neurological. And a lot of that neurological is predicated on instability at end ranges. So over enough time, it's like, you know, overhead mobility is lacking with a lot of people. They've just loaded in an overhead position where the nervous system goes, no, we're not stable in this position from a functional standpoint. We're very structurally unstable. Like a lot of people get sold on, and as someone who's been in the therapy world for 6 or 7 years now, like I get told a lot, oh, my last chiro or my last PT says I have a weak rotator cuff. My last chiro or my last PT says I have a weak core.
Yeah.
My last chiro or my last PT says I have a weak glutes. It's like, that's fantastic. None of those have to be strong. All of those have to be stable, right? So I look at the body through 3 hubs of stability: shoulder and hip, sort of these peripheral hubs, with the central hub kind of being the spine. And it's an elicitation of a different adaptation. Like, no one looks at me at fucking 275 pounds and was like, that too shallow is a good runner. Because it's obviously adaptations you have to make physiologically to be able to run longer distances. And that's not visually not the adaptations that would have to be made. And vice versa. Like, no one would look at a marathon runner and go, I bet you that guy could squat whatever, like 700. But it's not as opposite of adaptations as endurance and strength are. Stability is another adaptation, right? Like,
but isn't stability strength in the way?
No, it's not.
Okay.
No, because that means your hip circle that you put around your legs and walk around with, if you strengthen look at it this way. Do you speak another language?
And you still?
Come on, Italian? Yeah, of course. Saladino, right?
Of course.
With a hairstyle like that. But imagine, like, if you were fluent?
What's that?
Were you fluent?
No.
Okay.
It was broken, but I can have a conversation.
So the point I make is, for most people are tourists to physical activity, right? So they can get by without being fluent in the language or the physical literacy, physical adaptation. So if, like, say we were both fluent in Italian and we were going to go to Spain. Like, if we're only ordering lunch and getting on a train, we're fine. Yeah. And that's why the research will prove that on, like, verbal analog scales or however people are quantifying pain, that we can strengthen the glutes, we can strengthen the core, we can strengthen the rotator cuff and see a decrease, because it's getting subjected on people who are tourists in physical activity, right? But if we say, hey man, we're going to move to Barcelona tomorrow, you're now permanent resident. You're a permanent resident of physical activity. You got to speak the right language. And at these hubs, primarily most people are speaking Italian and residing in Spain.
Right.
So it's being the specificity of adaptation makes a huge difference. And it's when you look at overlapping distributions, it's going to make the most difference at the end of that distribution of high performance, right? Like, you could take 5 average people downstairs, right in the middle of the overlapping distributions, and some might benefit from strength, some might benefit from stability. But you give me an athlete, like you give me a pitcher, you give me I don't know, a soccer player, something like that. We're a top performer, and like if they can't stand on one leg, if they're forced outputs, they're gonna have a huge issue.
Right. Right. Derek?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in full agreement with all that. Like, I upgraded my my phone to get a better camera, and I always like I'm a camera guy, so I always thought that you had to get a bigger lens or a longer lens and a bigger sensor in your camera. But they're doing all the stuff with software now to make cameras better. They're not putting big lenses on phones, iPhones, or whatever that Huawei phone is, but they're doing software upgrades to make the hardware better. And I think it's the same thing. We can train people from a neuromuscular point of view to enhance the structure that they have. So, you know, that was the analogy. Is I'm looking at these phones going, wow, the picture's better than my big camera. And they've just done it all with software technology. So,
and I like the way you worded that, neuromuscular, because I think when we get taught on training muscles, we look to train them anatomically. Like we look to train muscle action rather than muscle function. Like bicep flex, yeah, okay, cool. So that's a 1-1, but this runs north to south. This has very little expression through a rotational plane, where a lot of our stability is created, right? Rotator cuff, piriformis, lateral rotators of the hip, multifidus, rotatories, like all these muscles that stabilize us work around a y-axis. So we need to train those muscles neurologically correctly rather than anatomically correctly.
Right.
Like it's not origin to insertion, it's training function and resisting force rather than training action and exerting force. It's like the fundamental difference between strength and stability.
No, absolutely.
because a lot of people are talking about this blood flow restriction for hypertrophy and this and that. And I'm just thinking about what are the neurological implications of that? Like, you know, obviously you have to superimpose other things on top of that. I have no experience with it, but maybe you guys could talk about that.
Well, I just want to, I know Mario Navarro.
And that's been around, but by the way, BFR has been around for ever. I don't know why people are just starting to talk about it.
Yeah, it's a big trendy thing now.
Vasper sort of reintroduced it to the market. So Vasper is like this unit that uses, it's like occlusion therapy with a cryo sort of. I know a lot of professional sports teams have them. I think they developed it out at NASA, but it was just, I worry long term about overreaching extra physiologically with, like, whether it's metabolic or whether it's neurologic adaptations. It's like when you remove that stimulus, like think of any sort of, like think of caffeine, right? Think of caffeine and, like, you know, you can gain an affinity. Like I can drink a triple shot espresso, lights out, right? No problem, because it's like my tolerance is so high. But it's like, okay, what if we're creating this? And I understand in the rehab setting where it's like you want to do that, but if we're arbitrarily doing it to create an extra physiological, like metabolic environment that wouldn't otherwise exist, how are we going to make an adaptation without reaching that new relative threshold? I worry about BFR in a lot of ways, just because your ability to overreach and what happens when you peel that away.
All right, so you mean overreach, like they're seeing such good progress from it, and then suddenly your body becomes so dependent on it to where you're just not really.
You're going to create a metabolic environment in repeated bouts that's not going to be repeatable without that apparatus, right? So it's like if your body gets really good at adapting to a state that it otherwise would never have to adapt to, then how are you going to elicit that state to drive the adaptation without that apparatus?
Right, but you're not. I mean, in my opinion, you would never really use BFR training when you're doing 4 reps, 6 reps, 8 reps. I mean, it's more of a tool that you're using. It seems like 10 reps and up. I mean, you know, in that range, to get as much blood as possible into the muscle.
Where I see BFR being the most beneficial, and this is a conversation I have with
rehab.
Preparation, man. Like I have a close friend of mine, strength, is the strength coach for probably 2 of the best U.S. swimmers we've seen. I'm not going to name drop, but based off that, 2 of the best female swimmers we've seen in the last maybe ever. And looking at BFR now as they warm up, like, you know, one of his girls is a middle distance to longer distance swimmer. So it's like if she's got to put in like a certain amount of reps and a certain amount of time prior to the race just to warm up, and we cut that down with BFR, she's going to have a lot more in the tank than I would expect. So that's where I maybe see it outside of rehabilitation. But, like, you know, if you want to do the old, like, Ray Charles tourniquet trick and, like, do a couple bicep curls,
big deal. But I mean, how much can you really? I mean, how many body parts can you really do BFR for? You could do for your arms, like bicep, tricep. You could do it for your quads and hamstrings, your calves, maybe.
Yeah.
Your head.
And there's some people out there I wouldn't mind if they did some.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's again, I think it's security through obscurity, man. Like, even if it's bicep curls, even if it's lat raises, even if it's quad extensions or squats, it's like how many people are actually executing the movement properly with proper intent?
Yeah, I was about to say that also. Most of the guys that are asking me questions about BFR, they've got 12 charms.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you guys haven't developed that foundation yet. And in my opinion, like, you need to learn execution. You need to learn, you got to develop some foundation to become strong. Even if it's an isolation movement, like, you don't really see anyone with big guns who have weak arms. It's just like, it's just my opinion on it.
Well, there's people overlook the skill. Like, here's the thing. People have what I would call a muscle-mind connection, not a mind-muscle connection. Like, you don't, unless you understand resistance profiles and strength curves, especially across like single joint or even bicep, like multi-joint muscle. Like, there's a lot that goes in. Like, there's a skill to a bicep curl. Like, we were doing incline curls earlier, and there was a point to that. There was a reason I was in the position I was in, because I was trying to overload the fully stretched position of the bicep. If I want to overload the fully shortened, which I'll do elsewhere in my program, I'll do something like a spider curl, because it changes how you superimpose the resistance profile of the exercise with the strength curve of the muscle you're training, right? So it's like, at no point do I need these fancy apparatus. It's like, understand that it's not just flexion of the elbow, and understand it's not just supination of the wrist or secondary flexion of the shoulder. Like, you can train a bicep out here and train the long head as like a monohumeral depressor of the shoulder as an adjunct to training rotator cuff, or your rotator cuff to stabilize the shoulder, create monohumeral depression. Like, there's a lot to something as simple as a bicep curl before we go slap it on, tourniquets and things like that. People want to go a mile wide, they don't want to go a mile deep.
Right. It's like when someone reaches out to me and they're asking me about macros, and I'm like, why don't you stop with the 5 cheats a week?
Yeah.
And the 3 nights of drinking, like, chill on the macros right now. So that's, and for anyone listening, what we're basically saying in simpler terms is put your time in, lay your foundation down, be in it because you love it. Don't be in there because you're trying to hit like, oh, I got to get, my weight to this point. Anyone I've ever seen who's tried to quantify with a number, unless you're getting to a meet, unless you're training for a meet like you did last weekend, which I want to talk about, by the way, I just feel like those are the people that aren't successful. They have to, I always say, even in business, Derek, start at the finish line. Set your goal, understand what you have to do day in, day out to hit that goal. But then don't obsess over 2 years from now, 3 years from now. Obsess over today. Focus on what do you have to do today to be great to hit that goal. And when you're done, give yourself a pat on the back for today, get a good night's sleep, wake up the next day, and then do it again.
Yeah.
And, try and not be perfect.
Well, the hardest part of that is, like, you talk about the guy who has 12-inch arms, who doesn't have strong arms, the guy with big arms with strong arms. It's like, as far as muscle groups go or things that could be weak, the biggest rate limiter I see to that outlook is here. Right. That's the weakness, man, because it's monotonous. Jesus, to be a powerlifter, are you kidding me? You know how many squats I've done? That was just like, you feel every rep and you go, okay, that was a little different. Why? Because I shift my way forward about 3/4 of the way down. Okay, that rep felt different. So anyone else is like, this guy just did the same 12 reps. I did 12 totally different exercises in that one set. Right. But it's goal oriented. Like, you have to me, psychology trumps physiology every day of the week. And anyone who's been an athlete or has worked with an athlete knows that. Like, if you got it right up here, this is the one thing that can never break.
What'd you total over the weekend? I didn't ask you. You don't know. You know.
No. I mean, I took a token bench because I'm dealing with a labrum issue from a car accident I was in. So I squatted 716, pulled 694. Like a token bench. It was 350 or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which I saw you do more than a few weeks ago when you were here.
Yeah. So I've done.
Put that up pretty easily. So.
Yeah, my best is 750, 441, 755.
750 on the 441 on the bench, and then 750 again. Okay. But your squat felt awesome. That's what you were saying.
All things considered, living out of a suitcase for the past, but it's here.
Yeah.
It's you get it right between the ears. Like, it's just execution. Like, that's all it is. You need to be present. What did I have to do? I had to show up in my head for 7 seconds. Like, I think that's a difference with strength sports. There's a difference between a powerlifter and an athlete who does powerlifting. Like, I played fairly competitive ice hockey at a point where your variables can change 7 times in a second. Where it's like, I show up and they're not playing the song I like. Gives a fuck, man. It's just no one's trying to rip a slap shot at my head or fucking punch me in the nose. I had all my teeth when I left. This is not something that I've left hockey games with in the past, right? No one's trying to take me out at the knees or like slash me in the neck or anything. So it's just like, oh, okay. Yeah, I was tired. Fuck, I was in Miami for a whole week before that. I got off a plane like 16 hours before I competed.
That's tough to do those numbers. So, I mean, in general, it's very few guys on the planet that can do that, but to have to travel the way that you travel and change time zones and sleep in different beds.
Well, see, and
You're also used to it though.
But it's not have to. Dude, I get it. Are you fucking serious? Like, dude, I have the best life ever.
Yeah.
It's like, I can hang out with you. This is totally work right now. As far as the government's concerned, that's Starbucks. I just got that bitch on. Not as easy, man. Like, because it's, at a certain point, it helps drive the business, but it's like, you got to bleed it, man. Like, you know that better than anyone. Like, this only works if you do.
Yeah.
The heaviest thing you lifted was a clipboard. Like, no one would give a shit.
Right. Right. And I always tell people, Derek, you got to clean your side of the street. And it's tough to be able to be there for other people if you don't have your shit together. So, if you're showing up hungover, if you're not resting, or if you're not training, I mean, this sounds incredibly selfish, but in the past, I would turn away an extra client just to make sure I got my training in.
Yeah. We got to lead from the front, man.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't do it. I would always, I tell Kim downstairs, I said, leave me 90 minutes. I want 90 minutes at the very least to warm up, to get it in, and get it in and out. And then it's just something I've always lived by. And it's like, well, you're turning away money, you're turning away business. I can't be good for them if I'm not good for myself. So can we talk, Derek, I want to ask, do you have any questions before we move on?
Well, I just thought it was interesting you guys were talking about that. Like, you guys think that it's necessary to consult a professional around some of the psychology issues and like a sports psychologist, because I mean, in a lot of the amateur sports I've been involved in Canada national team stuff, they always have a sports psych on staff, and I'm like, I don't know, does this guy help? Is this guy helping you? But do you guys think that that's necessary, or is it just got to come from you or maybe your network, your support network? What do you guys think?
Yeah, for me, it's like, I don't know if it's something that you need to be a professional in, like, unless you got like the yips in major leagues or something like that. I don't know. For me, I don't consult with. I have friends. I have friends that I can confide in and people that I can call, and like, there's a lot of times where, yeah, a 716 squat is heavy, but it's not the heaviest thing I gotta deal with.
Yeah,
what
sure,
I mean?
sure.
Like, there's a lot of shit that goes on in and out of the gym and out of sports that, I mean, you're still the same person, right?
Right.
Whether the bar is on your back or not. So I don't know. I think a lot of it comes down to motivation, right? Like, and you talked earlier about, those people who know they're not going to last because they're externally motivated. Like, if you got to fucking put on some CT Fletcher video to hit a workout, it's like, that's external, man. You're not going to make it. Like, it's got to be you're the last guy to turn the lights off. You're the first guy in, last one to leave, sort of thing. And I honestly think that there's a certain extent where some people, you can't fake passion.
No.
And like, that's like kind of a universal language where it's like, and I get it. Like, I know people who don't like lifting weights, but they like chess. When you talk to them about chess, man, the hair on their arm stands up. It's like, yo, I'm in. I get that. I don't get chess. Like, I don't know what the fucking horse thing does, but I get when I talk about lifting weights and the hair on my arm stands up.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
So I think the sports psych thing is just, I don't know. I've had experience with it. I'm fairly resistant to that intervention as a whole. But I have seen it effective. Like, if you look at the Olympics, I think Norway sent 8 sports psychs to the Winter Olympics last go around. And I think they're one of the, per capita, at least in the Winter Games, one of the most medal countries. So I think there's a correlation. I think it's a skill. It's something you got to train. Mindset is huge. If psychology trumps physiology, just as there's not going to be a training implement or adjunct or metric that we could necessarily track across all athletes from physical, in a physical realm, I don't think you can universally say that a psychological intervention is going to be as equally universally applied across any athlete, but there's something there.
I've worked with, Derek, I want to get your opinion from a running standpoint, but, everyone knows I've worked with a lot of golfers. And what's incredible is when you get to the range and you watch these guys hit, they don't have a bad shot on the range. I mean, their practice, and everyone thinks they're the best. Everyone thinks they can beat Tiger Woods on the PGA Tour. But you see it. You see it come tournament time. Who are the guys? You got to put 4 rounds together: Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And who are the guys that can basically, the one who wins on the tour every week are the ones who minimize bogeys. And you'll see guys who put up more birdies than other guys, more eagles than other guys. They have a couple doubles in there. You see orange on their car. You see yellow. You see some colors on their card to where you're like, all right, like for some reason the 3rd round, for some reason the 2nd round, it's always collapsing on these guys. So yeah, I think at a certain point when you're dealing with athletes like that, it's their livelihood. I do believe that, you got to lean on someone. You got to start exhausting other avenues. But when General Pop reaches out to me and they're like, how do I stay motivated? I'm like, well, I mean, this is such a broad question to ask. I mean, how the hell do I? It's like they're asking me, what's the best exercise? What's the best routine? I'm like, I don't know. Why are you asking me? Like, I haven't seen you move. I don't know. I don't know anything about you. And you're asking me a very, very general question. But, when it comes down to motivation, if someone feels like they can't get 20 minutes, I get bored. I'm like, then do 15. I'm like, it's literally that fucking simple. Like, I literally keep things that simple. I'm like, whoever said a workout had to be an hour or 90 minutes or that you have to power lift? Like, find what works for you. Do that. As granted, you're with someone who's intelligent and that's not causing more damage than help, because damage, causing more damage than hurt, because no one's in golf's good for you. So I'm working with golfers, and whenever I'm through a screening, like their asymmetry is a complete disaster. But if we cleaned up that asymmetry, it might completely screw them up. Yeah. From the golf, Tim Burke, Remax long drive champion. God, he set the world record at one point. I think he had a ball speed of 221 miles an hour. He had a swing speed of north of 150 something miles an hour. So just to put that into context for most people, his ball speed was 227. Dustin Johnson's is like, maybe if he gets after like 188. Yeah. Okay, so think about that. And when I remember sitting down with him before he hired his trainer, and me and Charlie Woncraft and I sat down with him, and he's like, I want to start training. I don't train. And I'm looking at this guy. I'm like, what was your sport before this? He's like, I was a pitcher for University of Miami. I'm like, all right, how tall are you? He's like, 6'5". Like, how much you weigh? He's like, 240. And I'm like, you're looking at this guy who looked like a farm boy. And I'm like, I gotta be honest. I'm like thinking to myself, you're gonna say that's ridiculous. I'm almost nervous to put him on a training program, because I'm like, dude, you generated all this speed. Like, if you go jump in and start deadlifting because you see me deadlifting, that could completely fuck you up. So don't think because it's going to actually help. So I don't know. I know it's a little bit of a rant, but it's different for each athlete and each person. Derek with running. I mean,
yeah, I think it's easier with those running and lifting sports and all that because they're more physiological based. But I was watching that. Did you guys watch that heavyweight fight where the guy Andy Ruiz, like?
No, I didn't see it. What did it happen?
Oh, you didn't see it?
No.
He's the shape of his sport, man.
This guy, he was like a third choice to fight Anthony Joshua, who's the heavyweight champion. And he came in and basically knocked him out, like knocked him down a couple of times. You could see Joshua was just not into it after he got hit a couple of times and went down. Just from a psychological point of view, you could kind of see what was going on too. Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
you probably read this, Derek? Have you read the book Endure, Alex Hutchinson?
That's the book you just.
I haven't read it, but I was at the same school as Alex. We were both in Montreal, like in the '90s, so I know who he is. Yeah.
No way, yeah. I started. It's all about like kind of psychology and physiology and limitations in human performance. And like, my favorite athletes are in sports that I care nothing about because they got it here. Like, I hate running, but the story of like, and you could probably know this better than me, the 4-minute mile, right?
Yeah.
The 4-minute mile. That was what's his name? Oh shit, he ran the 4-minute mile.
Bannister. Roger Bannister.
And then what's his name? Prefontaine. He's another one. Like, he had that quote: "The best pace is a suicide pace, and today it feels like a good day to die."
He was all in the front running. I love
like mid-distance runners to me are the biggest psychopaths I've ever met in my life. Yeah. Like, you want to talk just masochistic, just in it for pain. Yeah. A mid-distance runner is fucking psycho.
What was Prefontaine? He was the 5,000.
Yeah. Billy played him, right?
One of my clients.
Billy,
Dude, no. Hold on. So, I'm gonna tell you this. So, I watched the movie Without Limits, which is the Steve Prefontaine. So there's two of them. One's with Jared Leto called Pre. One's called Without Limits with Billy Crudup. And I'm sorry, Jared, but it's not a comparison. So I remember, I think it was in college, watching Without Limits, and you see that movie that just hits home. And you watch it literally 100 times in a year. And I'm like running on treadmills and I'm watching it at the time and this and that. And I remember when I got into training, I remember thinking to myself, if there's anyone in Hollywood I want to work with, it was Billy Crudup. And then one day Billy Crudup gets referred to me. And I'm actually like a little like, oh shit, this is fucking pretty. And I didn't bring it up for a while. And then we started, and then one day I'm in there training him and I'm like, I started laughing because I said, he literally, like when he works out downstairs, it's like the same, like he actually was kind of playing himself. Yeah. Like he like you gotta like literally like whoa, and this isn't like a constant sprint. I remember all he wanted to do was run, and we finally got him into some different styles of training. And I've been working with Billy now for probably 10, 11 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man, but like, the epigenetic expression of like having the psychology of it. Like, to me, Tyson, hands down, bar none. Like, when he came out in the hotel towel, he won. He won. He won. Dude, that's it. You're done. Like, this guy just told a news anchor that he's gonna eat your fucking children.
Yeah.
Avoiding
I remember that.
right? Like,
it's great.
or like when Tiger comes out on the Sunday and the red shirt is on, everyone knows that's why guys are hitting bogeys.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're running his race.
Do you remember when Tyson fought Spinks? You might have been just getting born by then. But I remember that Tyson fought Spinks, and Spinks is coming out, and like this was at the time when Tyson was at the peak of his game, and they're like, Spinks, he's a gold medal winner, and this and that, and his reach, and we don't know. And you see Spinks walk into the ring, and he was go pull this video up later on. Terrified. And I remember it was a big pay-per-view night. I'll never forget this. I was a young kid, and I remember in 91 seconds, the guy was dead. And 91 seconds. And I remember, I think I turned to my dad and I was like, what if someone was in the bathroom? Like imagine like being like, I got to run to the bathroom and being late and coming out. You missed the fight. The fight was over. Like what that, like this guy was dead. But you said it the second he walked out, the fight was over.
Yeah. Just the reduced essence. That's what I love. Above all else in sports, like give me someone who's just like the reduced, purest essence. And, you got Pacquiao and come out and he wore when Mayweather fought him, he had the big sombrero on backwards. And it's like it's all show no go, right? What's he gonna do? Dance around the ring like at 140 pounds for 12 rounds. But then Tyson walks out and just boom, Sheridan fucking hotel towel or Ritz Carlton, put a fucking hole in the top, and we walk out and we rip that guy's heart out of his chest. Like fuck yeah, man. That's what it's all about.
But that was pre-Derek, right? I mean, when did Pre pass away? 76, 77? It was
well, he went to 72 Olympics and whatever, came second or third. And then it was like a year or two after that, after the 72 Olympics, he flipped his MG or whatever. Yeah.
Wait, what was the next Olympic? Was it Montreal or
76? Yeah.
So that's what he was prepping for, and he was.
Yeah. It's too bad.
Terrible.
But they're rebuilding the stadium at University of Oregon. I guess they knocked down the old one, and they're going to build this huge stadium for the World Championships in a couple of years. So we're probably going to go down there and check that out. So,
all right. Well, listen. As we have a couple more minutes, I want to wrap a few things up. Talk to us about, because you have this online platform called Prescript.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's just scalable exercise intervention based off that bottleneck in people's training, right? Like whether it's gym pop, whether it's people. I mean, we subdivided it like hypertrophy, Olympic weightlifting, and powerlifting, but it's looking under the stones that people aren't looking under, right? It's kind of predetermining where in conventional programming things are going to go wrong and contingency planning for that. So like most programs, like, oh, just warm up for 10 minutes. It's like that sets the framework. That brings you to the starting line of every one of your workouts. And it's like, okay, what's the goal of the program? Like, or your powerlifting? Okay, what are the predetermined asymmetries and imbalances you're going to get if you're continuously squat, bench, and deadlifting in your program, and that's your goal. Mm-hmm. Like, what does the shape of that sport look like, and how do we not necessarily make you symmetrical, but make you symmetrical enough that you can still perform at a high level? Like we were talking to a guy downstairs who does jiu-jitsu. Yeah. And it's like, okay, like I don't want this guy to be symmetrical. Like I got a boxer I work with, like a welterweight champion, that this is what he looks like. Yeah. Like walking into Whole Foods, this is what he looks like. Because if he doesn't, he's gonna get lit. Yeah. So it's like, I'm not trying to get rid of that. I'm trying to make sure that, his scap can move well enough that his shoulder doesn't hurt when he's gonna throw a left hook. Right. That's the bottom line. And with powerlifting, with weightlifting, like they're so hardwired in the way people conventionally program that it's predictable. Like it's predictable where the injuries are gonna happen. Like anterior impingement of the shoulder, or an FAI to a certain degree of the hip. It's like we can hardwire into programming preventative measures and screens to stop people from succumbing to the injuries that are going to stop them from training ultimately. So our platform is just based off purely that. Like our IP is more or less getting people to the starting lines of these workouts. So what we did was we started purely with like scalable corrective exercise, and we got like good results. Like people were like avoiding surgeries, just going through like we would call like a gold standard of functional assessment, where it's like a lot of people just go straight to gold standard structural assessment. I got this MRI. Does that MRI tell me if you can hinge on one leg? Right. Does that MRI tell me if you can do like a walking lunge, like if your knee caving in? Like, does that MRI say like whether you can get it in an overhead position of your shoulder or not? Like, then I don't give a shit. Like I honestly, like the goal is to always outfunction that structure. Like, and I'm riddled. Like, I torn pec, torn quad, both meniscus gone, AC joint, bicep, labrum, rotator cuff. Like, you name it, I got it. Like, I squatted 750 on a torn quad. I bench 441 on a torn pec. It's like outfunction that structure. Whether it's pathology, you get hit by a Suburban and your labrum is now the hood.
Which is what happened, yes.
Yeah, or morphology, right? Like, you know, can't pick your parents, right?
Right.
So it's like being able to create like the gold standards of functional assessment and being able to make improvements in mobility and stability, which are that'll help you express strength. Most people just beat their head against the wall trying to get stronger, trying to get bigger, trying to get faster.
Right.
It's just like, you know, you just need to be in better positions to express the strength you have, the power you have, the speed you have.
It's amazing when you, and for the people listening, when you truly look at someone who can move properly. It's basically, we're talking about movement here. You see, you know, certain individuals that aren't huge that are able to be so much stronger than someone who actually looks all yoked up. And it really is, there needs to be some time, and you need to apply some of these, you know, I don't want to say methods, some of these exercises. Check out his program though. How do they, your Instagram is the muscle underscore doc?
So the underscore muscle underscore doc.
He's one of those guys using the underscores, but you'll see on my post that I'm gonna, obviously Derek and I are gonna be tagging him on that. And if they want to sign up for Prescript, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, www.pre-script.com.
Right.
Shoot me an email, Jordan@muscle.com.
Jordan's definitely one of the better programmers that I've met. He's turned into a good friend, and I've definitely enjoyed getting to know him and working with him. So, guys, one of the bright young stars in the business, reach out to him. And thanks for joining us today. Derek.
Thank you, fellas.
You're the best.
I'm okay.
I'll talk to you this week.
Okay, guys. Take care.